to have a guest joining us tonight for the show. Ben Hill from MiLB.com is here to join us. We're going to talk some minor league baseball. You might know Ben as the author of Ben's Biz, which follows his travels around the country to various minor league parks. Ben, thanks for joining us tonight. Would you like to take a second and promote your social media presence?
Sure thing. Thanks for having me, guys. I write for MiLB.com. Follow me on Twitter at Ben's Biz. That's BENSBIZ. Instagram, the Ben's Biz, because Ben's Biz was taken.
That's just like one of our other podcasts. The name was taken for some reason. Funny how that works. So let's dive right into it. It's February, so of course we figured this would be the perfect time to have you on the show, talk some baseball. So I know that part of your blog is covering your travels all around the country. You're trying to get to all, 160 affiliated minor league ballparks?
I did that last year. I finally completed the journey. I've been to all 159 affiliated ballparks and 174 overall.
Wow. We got some good travelers, but that dwarfs all of us. Mark, you've been probably the most of all of us, right?
Yeah, it's if you want to say current ballparks, I think it's 102. If you want to say all time, it's probably about 130. So it's every year there's a new ballpark opening up, and your list goes up, and you got to make more plans. So,
Dave, how many have you been to?
I don't know. I've been to all the International League and a handful in the PCL, and one or two here or there.
Nice. I know my number at the end of last season is now 69 for active ones, and I think like 80 overall. Yeah. So, Ben, tell us about some of your favorites, some experiences that might have stood out from the pack, wherever you want to go.
Anytime you're talking about minor league baseball with, rookie ball to AAA, it can be definitely real tough to, kind of narrow it down because it's such a wide world. And that's what I like about covering minor league baseball, that so much falls under the umbrella of minor league baseball. So in terms of things that stood out, so much through the years. I've been traveling since 2010. As I said, 174 ballparks overall. So, over the off season, after I visited every single park, finally did the hashtag Ben Everywhere goal of having been to every active affiliated park. I did a series of, Ben's best articles in which I, tried to name my favorites level by level, both overall ballparks and then, food or ballpark characters, and, spent a lot of time breaking that down. So best ballparks, it can be anything. I think for AAA, I went with, the El Paso Chihuahuas, AA, Reading Fighting Phils, all the way down to rookie level, in Bluefield, West Virginia, or Virginia. I always forget what stadium or what state that stadium is in because it's pretty much on the state line. So it all blurs together. It's been a lot of different experiences.
So I get asked a lot too, what's your favorite minor league ballpark? But do you break them down? Like, what level of baseball do you like the most? Do you like your AAA ballparks, or do you favor some of those old classic ones in the Appalachian League?
I like aspects of everything. I think and sometimes it's hard for me to, turn off my kind of professional brain and go to the fan brain, the part of me that's always liked baseball and is just kind of responding on a more visceral or emotional level. I think on that level, I'm definitely a fan of the old parks, even when they're, a little beat up. I'm very grateful, for instance, that I got the opportunity to go to Sam Lynn Stadium in Bakersfield, which in a lot of ways was, one of the laughing stocks of minor league baseball in terms of the amenities it had and the sun setting in your eyes. They would have to delay the game, in the first inning for about 20 minutes because the sun was setting in your eyes. But I love those experiences because you meet kind of weirder people and you have weirder experiences and you kind of get to burrow in to these baseball worlds that are full of eccentrics and eccentricities. So I really enjoy that aspect, especially as a fan, the classic ballparks and using minor league baseball as an excuse to go to places you probably wouldn't think to go otherwise.
Yeah, you're exactly. Because I don't think I'll ever get down to Kingston, Tennessee, or Bristol, Tennessee again. But I was there to see minor league baseball, and you're right. Some of those old ballparks definitely do have a lot of character to them, especially when they're packed full of people on a beautiful summer night. There might not be nothing better.
No, I agree.
So for someone who is not as well traveled in minor league baseball, could you give me what would you say the differences are as you're heading down? I mean, aside of course from the players being older and more experienced and whatnot, but how are the experiences going to be different from AAA to AA to Single A to Rookie League?
I mean, most simply, and obviously there's a lot of variety within each level, but most simply, you're going to see the scale slightly get lower and lower for each level. There's corresponding, minimum seating levels for each level of play where there has to be, X capacity for it to accommodate that level of play. So things get, generally speaking, more smaller and more intimate. But even within that, you can go to a, Class A short season stadium like Lowell or somewhere in Brooklyn and have that, kind of have more amenities than, a double A ballpark in Binghamton maybe. So it's hard to always say anything with certainty in the minors, but generally speaking, you're going to see things smaller. You're going to get things on a more and more intimate scale. And, and also be operating in, generally speaking, smaller communities, which kind of informs the experience as well in terms of who the fans are and where they're drawing from.
I'd like to make a correction. It's actually Kingsport, Tennessee, not Kingston. So just had to make that. Anyway, Hartford just decided to ban peanuts from their ballpark. Do you see other minor league baseball teams following suit as the decade nears the end?
Yes, I definitely do. I couldn't predict who and when. I was covering the story last week. I did a feature story on it. That's very much part of my world in terms of just, in addition to visiting these places, is just, covering the business of minor league baseball and why these teams make these decisions. And, as you guys are, probably aware, I'm sure aware, in minor league baseball, you do see a lot of, it's called in the industry. They just say we like to steal ideas. These teams don't, compete with one another. So if something is done somewhere and it works on any level, it's probably going to be done somewhere else. I think the peanut thing was really interesting, just because how iconic peanuts and Cracker Jacks are at the ballpark. And then all of a sudden, the Yard Goats have over 200 items at their ballpark. And what two are they banning? Peanuts and Cracker Jack. It gets people talking in way more than if they banned just about anything else. Personally, I think I support it because peanut allergies are something that, they can be an airborne hazard and they are especially prevalent in children. And but it's really interesting how that debate, talking to the GM of the team, he told me, this is just a very American debate right now about, our coddling our children, about, quote, the wussification of America. He's like, peanuts are the collateral damage in this whole thing. And I really did like this issue for that reason, how it people brought their pre-existing worldviews into this debate, and it informed what their opinion was. I think a relative minority actually thought, what is the team trying to do here in terms of why are they making this decision and why? And I spoke to some mothers who have children with food allergies who really informed that decision, and I think that's a perspective that's easier to overlook.
Yeah, it's absolutely a great point. I think, and also overlooked, as someone who worked in minor league ballpark concessions for a dozen years, I welcome getting rid of peanuts because man, the mess created by a bag of peanuts is just worse than anything else you're going to sell. So I'm sure that it's a great PR move by Hartford to say, look, we're going to get rid of this. We're opening up the ballpark now to all these families who couldn't come before. But man, the man hours you are going to save sweeping up peanuts is just something that just hasn't been mentioned in the discussion before.
Yeah, that's a great point, though. There's a lot of workers on the cleanup crew after those games who are going to be glad not to see any shells. That's for sure.
So, go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to ask. Maybe this is a bit more on the field kind of question. And noticing, I'm noticing a trend that is teams pulling their top prospects from playing in AAA. I know the Blue Jays have done this, and that's home for me. they've tried to keep their top prospects in AA maybe a little longer, and you're seeing a lot of prospects that are skipping AAA altogether. And I'm not sure what the reasoning is, whether it's, exposure to people who have been in baseball too long that aren't, accelerating into the top level, or what. Do you see a trend here? And is there a danger for AAA?
I do see that trend. Bigger picture with me covering, what I call the business and culture pretty much of minor league baseball. Pretty much all our other writers would probably be better equipped to answer a more on the field question such as that. But I think generally speaking, it is at this point, AA is considered the level for top prospects, and AAA is more for the veterans, for the so-called 26 men, for the kind of more up and down veteran type of players where it's not so prospect oriented. So I've definitely seen that, and we've had discussions about that before, with coworkers, but I don't really cover the player development angle strongly enough to know exactly what the thinking is.
Do you think that's going to hurt AAA in the future? I know, like I said, back to the Blue Jays again. The Jays essentially lost their affiliation with Syracuse because Syracuse got tired of them not being competitive. Their best prospects not being in Syracuse, and then they were, outcasts with Las Vegas for a couple of years before they could sign in with Buffalo. Like, do you think this is going to hurt AAA and hurt the fan experience? Like, is there a translation between who's on the field and who's in the stands?
I'd say in AAA there is the biggest potential translation in terms of fans going to see, certain prospects or caring about a winning team. It matters more in AAA. But that said, from AAA all the way down to rookie ball, the average fan is not at all well versed on who the prospects are, and the average fan is not at all going to the game based on wanting to see their team win. I think that's more true at the lower levels, a little less true at AAA, but there's no doubt in AAA across the board that the average fan, even in AAA, is going just for the so-called, industry, buzzword or buzz catchphrase, affordable, family-friendly fun. And I've heard one of the biggest industry cliches I've heard from executives all over the industry is, when our fans leave the game, they might not know the score, but they know they had a good time. And I think that applies to AAA as well, that what they're really trying to do is just to make something that's fun for everybody. Of course, do they want a winning team? Yes. Do they want top prospects? Yes. But I think in most cases, it's not a make or break scenario, although it certainly can contribute to the success if you do have good players and top prospects.
Yeah. Now I have a question. The names of minor league ball teams: Rubber Ducks, Jumbo Shrimp, Rumble Ponies. When you first started seeing a trend of these names, were you in favor of it, or was that all part of the family-friendly vibe of minor league baseball?
Yeah, it's funny how this has changed. Like, going back to the Iron Pigs, Lehigh Valley, which is a little over a decade ago, I look at that as one of the first names that was kind of truly, crazy, where people were like, this is wild. And then you kind of get used to it. And then I remember, I guess it was prior to 2014 where it was Chihuahuas. And then you're thinking like, no, El Paso's not really going to do that. And they do it. And now, 5 years later, Chihuahua seems, even kind of tame a little bit.
It does, yeah.
As we're heading into 2019 with sod poodles and in 2020, the Rocket City Trash Pandas. So I think more than most people have become a little immune to it, just having to cover it all the time. I am generally in favor of it because, one, it's successful. For as much as, fans, especially in the immediate reaction, especially on Facebook and social media, will be like, this is an embarrassment, fire your marketing director, X, Y, and Z. Teams aren't doing this because they're masochists or because they want to make their fans mad. They're doing this because there is a very strong track record of success going back a decade plus. And it's part of the formula for the fans to get mad and then go to a game, see how it ties into the overall experience, and probably within a year or two being like, hey, you know what? I love this. I think a lot of the anger is just not really understanding what a 21st century minor league experience, can be. And again, you just wouldn't see it happening again and again if it was not successful.
Now, do you ever see the? Oh, I'm sorry. Do you ever see the trend of it going back? Maybe a little more subtle name or traditional names like the Jacksonville Sun.
Yeah, I get asked that question a lot, and I think minor league team names, like most things in the sport, like most things in life, are cyclical. Like that there's ebbs and flows. But I've been proven wrong. I thought Chihuahuas was wild, and now we're looking at trash pandas. But I don't know. Maybe we can go a lot further than trash pandas, but I think there will be a trend towards a little more conservative as the years go on.
I think Worcester's going to be a good test case for that in 2 years, whether they stick with Red Sox or if they go with something kind of crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll be a big one.
All right, I made it to 724 without mentioning Worcester. So.
Good for you. That's a record.
Go ahead, Dave.
Would to me, maybe the outlier here in a name that, if you think about it, is kind of crazy, but has been around for a heck of a long time, the Mud Hens. Would the Mud Hens have been crazy back in the day?
Well, and I've written stories along those lines of, longest running team names. And I think that's part of it is you go back to, I think, like the 20s or even before that with the Mud Hens name. And if that came out today, people would be like, this is an outrage. This is embarrassing. But since it's been there for 90 some years, it's just part of tradition, and I'm not the first to make this point. But how bizarre is the name Red Sox or White Sox if you just hadn't heard it your whole life and just come to accept it as fact? We get used to things. And I think a lot of the weirdness is just because you're not used to it, and then you say it a few times or you get used to it over a few years, and it just seems kind of like what is, and it no longer kind of gets you mad or even makes you think at all very much, except it's something you like. It's baseball.
Now, do you think the same sort of formula has happened with Syracuse and the Mets? Because, you had it's not like it's a crazy name or anything, but there was definitely a backlash when it was announced that Syracuse was going to be renamed as the Mets.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, big picture, the trend we've seen over the last decade is seeing teams shifting from parent club names to unique names. And there's obviously lots of reasons to do that. You establish your own identity independent of affiliation. You can sell more merchandise. You can brand the ballpark in a better way. We have seen like Oklahoma City had some Dodgers ownership and they changed the name to the Dodgers. South Bend was so happy to get the Cubs affiliation given their proximity. They changed their name, from a unique name, the Silverhawks, to the Cubs. Yeah. We're seeing the same thing with the Syracuse Mets. Definitely an outlier, but it's, the Mets now own the team. So I think, the minor league front office side of it didn't really have a choice. I don't know what their opinions are on it. And so because there's that direct ownership with the team, I guess they really wanted to put their stamp on it, at least in these early years. I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if down the line they switched to something unique. It's interesting in Syracuse that team going back to the 30s had only ever been the Chiefs or the Sky Chiefs. Yeah. And never once had they had a parent club name. So in the year, to head into 2019 and finally have the name of your parent club is certainly making them an outlier. It's not a very exciting identity. It certainly alienates fans who might support, the Chiefs, but they have their own major league rooting affiliations where it's hard to go to Syracuse and be like, let's go Mets. It's a little more alienating in that way, but it is also a very exciting time for the franchise because they're community owned. They've consistently lost money. And in terms of keeping baseball long term in Syracuse, it's due to that Mets relationship. And they really want to, make that clear right now, especially in the early going.
Yeah. Now, speaking of Syracuse, that's sort of one of the ballparks that was built a little bit away from the downtown. And there's been some concerns that there could be a new ballpark somewhere down the future or major upgrades. What's your take on some of these older AAA ballparks that may not be centered in the downtown? Do you think what could be used for a minor league team to create excitement to get people to enjoy a night out there?
Yeah, it is definitely tougher when you're in an area like Syracuse where you kind of have to drive there and it's not tied into any part of larger day out in the city or bars or restaurants or park area or outdoor activities. It definitely makes it a tougher thing to do. I'm sure Syracuse, like pretty much any team, if they could, they would like a new stadium. But when you're dealing with public money in a lot of cases, obviously that's going to be a lot easier said than done, and for good obvious reasons in a lot of cases there. So it is tough. You have to hustle that much harder and create a product that makes people want to get in their car and come see you, independent of anything else that's going to draw them to that area. So it can be tough, especially when your ballpark, is a little bit older, doesn't have the modern amenities, might not have a 360-degree concourse or a super high-def video board. It is definitely operating at a disadvantage, and I think that's where you just have to be more and more creative. Creativity can't account for everything, but I think that's one of the strongest things you have in your arsenal is just like really always pushing. And outside of, in Syracuse, outside of how boring the new name is, that front office has had a lot more energy and creativity in recent years than they had previously. So I think even with the Mets name, they're going to keep hustling and keep doing fun things. Like last year, I loved their Salute to Central New York promotional theme that included the salute to the Brannick device, where they actually wore jerseys saluting the Brannick device, the foot measuring tool. Those are the kind of things I love about minor league baseball. You got players in Brannick device jerseys.
That was Paul Lucas's idea, correct?
It wasn't his idea, but he once he heard about it, the team took it to new levels because they had like this outside media interest.
Nice.
So the promo took on a much bigger role because of Paul Lucas's interest.
Mm.
I was going to ask you what a Brannick device was. Thank you for answering that question. So along those lines, what do you think about all the rebranding that's going on, the special nights, like the food nicknames? We actually did a whole podcast about food one time, and we ended up talking about things like the salt potatoes and the garbage plates and the whoopie pies and the hot wieners. What's your take on some of these names? And
well, something's successful when people copy it and copy it and copy it. Right. And, I've been tracing this trend or covering this trend, which, to me, it starts with Lehigh Valley not changing their name, but doing the bacon-themed uniforms. And that kind of spurred Fresno to take that idea of a food-based uniform, but actually change their name, and they became the Tacos. And I think the 1-2 punch of Lehigh Valley with the bacon uniforms, Fresno with the taco identities, then you just saw the snowball rolling down the hill and just so many teams picking up on that. Like anything else, it now starts to feel not boring necessarily, but you just kind of, at this point, when you follow the world like I do, you just kind of note it and you're like, that's cool. And don't think much of it unless it's something that has, a personal connection. But that's what I like about it. I'm roundabout way getting to that. When I cover minor league baseball, or what I like about minor league baseball and why I like to cover it, is the things that make each community unique, that make each region unique, that make each town unique. And food is often part of unique regional identity. So anything a team can do to highlight their regional identity is, to me, something great. And then you learn about the country. I'm always such an advocate for minor league baseball in terms of how much you learn about America just through covering and following minor league baseball. I didn't know what a Runza was until Omaha suited up as the Runzas last year. You learn about Syracuse salt potatoes. You learn about Scrapple and Delmarva, hot wieners in Pawtucket, and so on and so forth. Now we got two teams trying to claim whoopie pie supremacy, Reading and Portland.
Right.
So they actually had to battle it out. You learn so much. And people take such pride too in their food, in Rochester garbage plates. They just go by the name plate. They took out the garbage, but those are garbage plates, and so on and so forth. You learn. Fans respond, especially local ones, because these are things they grew up with, they take pride in, and they've never really seen it celebrated in such a visual and creative manner outside of just going to a restaurant that serves it.
Is there any trend on the horizon that we can look forward to in this vein?
Well, we've been talking about that, me and my coworkers, or myself and people on Twitter. What are new directions that we can go with alternate identities? Two intriguing ones so far this year. We have Altoona, who are going to rebrand, I think, for several nights this year in 2019 as the Yinzers. If you're from Pittsburgh, I'm not from Pittsburgh, but I went to Pitt, so I have a decent understanding of that region. But I haven't come across any team, changing their identity to regional, in reference to regional dialect or a name that people give themselves based on regional dialect. So that's a new one. And I've been trying to think of other geographical dialects that could work for alternate identities, maybe in the South or the Pacific Northwest or what have you. Another real interesting one. There you go, the Yuppies. Get that Upper Peninsula pride for sure. Another alternate identity that I like a lot is Bowling Green last week announced that they're going to play one game as the Sinkholes, and that is a reference to the Corvette Museum in Bowling Green that had a sinkhole open up underneath it, and a bunch of classic Corvettes fall into the sinkhole. 5 years later, they're going to call themselves the Sinkholes in reference to this, and they have a really cool logo that has the BG kind of like on the undercarriage of the car, which itself is like half submerged in the sinkhole. And that's some next level alternate identities when you got something like the Sinkholes and the Yinzers. Who knows where we're going next?
Yeah, that's interesting because I just got an email that the Bowling Green review has to be updated. So maybe that's a good night to go when they honor that Corvette sinkhole from 5 years ago.
Yeah, I'd recommend that one for sure.
Yeah.
Wow, of all the places for a sinkhole to pop up, huh?
Yeah, it was, Bowling Green, there's, it's on the way to Nashville from where I am in Indianapolis. So I usually stop in Bowling Green, Nashville, and then come back. Not one of my favorite cities to visit and not one of my favorite ballparks, but, something like that could probably get me in my car or drive about 3 hours south to see it. So classic example of trying to pull people into your ballpark.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll draw people from a much wider region than usual.
Yeah.
So how about we've seen a lot of shifts in franchises this winter, with the Southern League, New Orleans joining the Southern League, Wichita, and we got some other franchise moves coming up. Anything on the horizon we should be aware of?
Secrecy.
Yeah, well, 2020 is going to be the Wichita move, New Orleans to Wichita. In 2019, as you guys probably know, we're going to see the movement is mostly based around the whole domino series. It was all teams in the same ownership group. But if you can try to follow this real quickly, and the Helena Brewers in the Pioneer League moving from Helena to Colorado Springs, becoming a rookie-level Pioneer League team, the Rocky Mountain Vibes. The AAA team that had been in Colorado Springs, the Sky Sox, is moving to San Antonio and becoming the San Antonio Missions in the Pacific Coast League. San Antonio has long had a team called the Missions, but they were the AA Texas League. That AA Texas League entity is going to Amarillo and becoming the Sod Poodles. So those are all teams in one ownership group, the Elmore ownership group. So that kind of made it easier for that to happen. But those are most of the new changes we have for 2019. Also, we have in Fayetteville, after 2 years in a temporary stadium in Bowie's Creek at Campbell University, we have finally a new ballpark opening in Fayetteville, and that's going to be home to the Woodpeckers. So that'll be a new team coming up in 2019. And also a new ballpark in Las Vegas is one to look forward to. Las Vegas ballpark, but it's technically located in Summerlin, which is essentially a planned community adjacent to Vegas. And so that's one of the big ones, too, in terms of changes to the landscape. 3 new ballparks and some geographical shifts, league shifts. It can be hard to keep track of. There's no way I'd know it if I wasn't paid to know it.
Absolutely. And Vegas is rebranded for this year, right? They're going to be the Aviators?
They're the Aviators, yeah. I mean, Everything with Vegas is basically tied into Howard Hughes right now. The team is owned by the Howard Hughes Corporation. Summerlin, where the ballpark is located, is a planned community owned by the Howard Hughes Corporation, and the Aviators name is a reference to Howard Hughes and his aviation exploits. So when you're thinking about Las Vegas baseball in the year 2019, think of Howard Hughes. Or don't, but,
Well, a common name compared to some of these other ones.
Yeah, it's downright conservative compared to a Sod Poodle or a Trash Panda, for sure.
Funny that you brought up Vegas, because Vegas is one of the spots, Vegas, Charlotte, a couple other spots where you hear rumblings about Major League Baseball coming. To me, it with the newness of the stadiums and the heavy investment that you already have in AAA baseball, to me it always seemed to be a bit of a far fetch. But what do you think?
I don't know. I mean, we've heard. I really don't know how that's going to shake out. I do know that in some of these markets, these AAA markets getting new ballparks, certainly one of the arguments against new ballparks on the AAA level has been the message we're sending now. This was certainly one of the opposition arguments in Charlotte, is kind of like, we're getting a new AAA stadium, then what we're telling people is we're a AAA city. So that can be one of the arguments against. And again, when you're dealing with public money and whatnot, it is hard to justify the building of a brand new, very nice AAA stadium and then a couple years later be like, oops, now we got to do a Major League one. That said, Major League Baseball is such a huge proposition and a huge opportunity. At the end of the day, I think if the opportunity is really there, they'll find a way to do it. And what becomes of the AAA stadium is anyone's guess. It's still going to be a really nice new stadium. But I really don't know how all that's going to shake out or what the presence of AAA means in that process.
So would you think that Portland is kind of going in that direction where, AAA baseball left Portland like years and years ago, and now all of a sudden Portland is a destination that is talked about for Major League Baseball, where they don't have a AAA team that's in the way or anything like that?
Yeah, you could see that. And then sometimes, I hear people comment like, how are you going to talk about Portland as a major league city when they couldn't even support a AAA team? I think that's kind of apples and oranges in terms of the level of support it gets, and the level of interest is a little different. But I think Portland, there's no AAA team there. The closest baseball they have, is very close, but, Hillsborough, but that's Class A short season in the Northwest League, and certainly no obstacle to Major League Baseball should that come in. They might be able to coexist as a Class A short season team in much the same way you see, Brooklyn Cyclones or Staten Island Yankees coexisting in the New York media market. So you don't know how that's going to play out. But, Portland seems, as viable as any of the others right now. A whole side argument of that, which I literally don't know anything about, is what if Major League Baseball expands by two teams? How does minor league baseball expand to accommodate two whole systems? Because it really can't right now in terms of like two new AAA locales, two new AA. I think we'll end up seeing some shifting within like the pre-existing amount of teams, but some shifting in who's in what leagues. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. I have no idea. But it's interesting to think about.
That's good.
It's great to know other people stay up late thinking about things like this.
Yeah.
Now, Ben, is there a certain market that's out there that is maybe besides Portland, even though they do have Hillsborough in the suburbs, that's void of any minor league baseball team that you're thinking, man, this would be such a great spot for a team?
Wow, that's a really good question because I feel like I should have an obvious answer, but
up to you.
I'm trying to think of a place that like a large viable market that is just completely devoid. That is a good question.
Providence.
Yeah, trying to think of I know like Wilmington, North Carolina has been mentioned as a spot for quite a while, and I think one that is definitely viable down the line. Some of it is just geography compared to, it just doesn't really slot into other leagues. You look at the state of Minnesota, does not have a affiliated team. They've got the Twins and they have the independent St. Paul Saints, but they don't have an affiliated team. So, of course, you look at whole regions like that could support minor league baseball. The problem is that there's not a league infrastructure that makes sense in terms of travel. So I think those are the areas I see it most. But unless you can wholesale start a new league or greatly expand a pre-existing one, you just can't create a league footprint right now where that area could really work. So I think that's where you see mostly the markets that could support but don't have it, is just where there's no league.
Ooh.
How about the whole country of Canada? And there's one minor league team there now? Do you think? I know it's tried in places like Ottawa before. Do you think there's anywhere up there that might be able to support a team?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you go back 20, 30 years ago and you were looking at teams in Ottawa and Calgary, AAA then in Vancouver. I remember looking at the backs of baseball cards as a kid and being like, where is Medicine Hat? Those kind of places. There were quite a few Canadian teams. I remember doing an article on this years ago, and things might have changed, and I've forgotten a lot of it. But I think a lot of it was, post 9/11 border security. It just became a lot more difficult for those up and back, trips across the border in terms of the cost of it. So I think that's a lot of it was just logistically. Then you have to deal with the exchange rate. I don't know how that affects it right now, but I think just the ease of travel was the main thing that caused a lot of teams to leave. I think the markets could support it. I'd personally love it just to have new places to go and to feel like the game was slightly, a little more international in that regard. Because right now we have 160 minor league teams and 159 of them are in the United States.
So just Vancouver. Wow. That's amazing.
And that's exactly what happened to Edmonton. Edmonton was good to go, and they were successful, and they were doing fine. And then all of the partners in the Pacific Coast League said, "Nah, we're not going up there anymore," because Calgary was gone, and Edmonton was way off on its own, and nobody wanted to go back there. And they basically squeezed them out.
Yeah, and I think that's basically the story. And going on a tangent, you only have to go back 30-some years to where the Pacific Coast League had a team in Hawaii, which just seems wild right now. But
that's awesome.
Yeah,
Hawaii Islanders, San Diego Padres, correct?
I believe so. Hawaii Islanders. That team became the AAA Sky Sox, who have now become the AAA San Antonio Missions, and on it goes.
Yeah, I heard that the Hawaii team would play a series of games for like a couple weeks in Hawaii. And then they would come on the mainland for a series of games. But I just cannot imagine Hawaii ever being back in the Pacific Coast League.
I cannot either. I think it'd be awesome if it was, but
it would be nice.
Yeah, logistically speaking, I see virtually, never say never, but I see an incredibly low chance of it ever returning.
Now, how old were you when you went to what was your first minor league ballpark? When did you fall in love, like I did, going to these type of games?
It's funny. I was always a huge baseball fan. I grew up in the Philadelphia suburbs, Ambler, PA, about 20 miles north of the city, and always a huge Phillies fan, just obsessive from as pretty much as long as I can remember. But that said, I didn't really go to much minor league games. My first real experience with the minor leagues was my grandparents had a house in the Poconos right around the time the AAA, the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Red Barons were starting up, and I loved that. It was a Phillies farm team, so contrary to what I was saying about how like the results on the field don't matter, I went to those games like hyped as a Phillies fan, and the stadium has been essentially torn down and rebuilt since then. But at the time, it was like a mini vet, with the same architectural layout, just much smaller, the same field dimensions, artificial turf, and I remember just being excited. Like kind of realizing that when players left the major leagues, they didn't just disappear. I remember seeing Steve Jeltz playing in one of those games, who I remembered from the Phillies a few years earlier, and just being blown away. Like, wow, the minor leagues have guys like Steve Jeltz, like still playing. And I was so excited by that. So I was super into those late 80s, early 90s Scranton Wilkes-Barre Red Barons teams. And I still remember some guys who never really made it. Steve Scarsoni or Jeff Grotwald, who at the time I was like, these guys are awesome, So that was definitely my first experience and by far the most vivid one, because for the most part I was just all major league Philadelphia Phillies all the time.
Yeah, see, my grandmother lived in Wilkes-Barre, and we would go there, I don't know, every other month to visit. There really wasn't much to do. So I remember sometime in the early 90s, my mom took me to a game at Lackawanna County Stadium, and it was like, wow, this is much different than checking out a game at the Vet or Shea Stadium, what I'm used to. And then, every time we traveled, I wanted to check out a stadium here and there. And so it was sort of like you saw former players, and it was cheap tickets. You were up close and personal. And every summer, just like you, I'm trying to visit as many ballparks as I can.
Yeah, it's a worthwhile pursuit. It never gets old, really.
No, it's always something new to go to.
Yeah.
So if Ben, if travel is not an issue for you, you can, I don't know, you've got some sort of teleporter machine. You can go there in an instant, no problem. And you're looking for some dinner. Where are you going? Which minor league ballpark are you going for dinner, and what are you eating?
Well, that's a good question. For me, it's complicated somewhat in that I got diagnosed with celiac disease in 2012, so I had to go gluten-free. So I actually recruit designated eaters at the ballparks I go to.
you do it.
And
we got plenty of those over at Stadium Journey. Just saying.
yeah,
you better not be taking resumes. You're going to be flooded.
Yeah, well, every year when I post my itinerary, I say please get in touch if you want to be a designated eater. And some of the smaller markets, I might just get one or two people who quote apply. But some of the bigger places like Toledo, there was stiff competition for that last year. In terms of me, it is compromised by the whole gluten-free thing, but I'd probably say El Paso because. One, the Mexican's a little easier on the gluten-free side, but even putting that aside, that ballpark is literally on the border with Mexico, and you can see Juarez from right behind the stadium. And the ballpark food with a lot of the tacos and the Juarez street dogs that are bacon wrapped, really is not just an Americanized, just our idea of what Mexican food is like. It is very real Mexican food that I just thought was so great to have. You need that. If you're a border ballpark, you really need that border town cuisine. And I thought El Paso was doing it really, really well.
Does El Paso get a lot of crossover from Juarez?
They do, and they do market to Juarez. I'm not sure what portion of their fan base, comes from Juarez. It's certainly a minority, but they do market to Juarez, and they also have game day employees for sure who make the commute from Mexico and work there.
So do you know where your schedule takes you this year? Are you hitting all the new ballparks or coming back to some favorites?
I'm working on the schedule now. I think last year that I hit the milestone of having been everywhere. It's, caused me to kind of rethink how I do things a little bit, because in the past I was always a little bit manic in terms of if I was going to a region, then I had to just hit as many other ballparks as I could in that region. But, for the way I cover things, when you hit 7 in 7 days or 10 in 10 days, and you're trying to write feature stories and blog posts and recruiting the designated eaters and doing that and trying to be active on social media and doing podcast segments and X, Y, and Z, I think going forward I'm going to try to slow it down, spend more time in each place, not hit as many places, but just try to expand the coverage and try to do things in new ways so I don't start to feel redundant. So all I can really say right now is that I'm going to be going for sure. This is what I'm, comfortable talking about right now. I'm certainly going to Amarillo, seeing the Sod Poodles, certainly going to Fayetteville, seeing the Woodpeckers, certainly going to Las Vegas and seeing the Aviators. Those are the 3 new ballparks. And that's the one thing I can guarantee for 2019 and that I'm looking forward to. Beyond that, I don't know, but I'll definitely hit a few other places.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I hate when you go to a city and a ballpark and then the next day you got to hop in your car or fly someplace else. Sometimes you go to a city that you really enjoy. Has there been a city or a small town that you felt, wow, I wish I had a couple more days here?
Oh, all the time. And because most of the time my itineraries are kind of grueling, which is my own fault, but a lot of time I just feel like I barely got a sense of a place before I had to leave. And sometimes these hotels are, in very homogenous areas. And when you look up and down the road, it could be anywhere in America. And you're like, man, this sucks. I really want to get a sense of this place and I'm not getting it. That said, I've certainly been to a lot of places that I've really enjoyed visiting. I've been in New York City for 16 years. I love New York City. But sometimes I go to other places and I flirt with living there. These other cities are small towns are I look at them as mistresses, and New York City is my wife back home, and I can never leave my wife, New York City. But I don't know how well that analogy works, but it's how I think of things. So anywhere from Eugene, Oregon, just being in a kind of hippie, free spirited town like that. Cities like Durham, North Carolina, and a lot of that region in general. Portland, Maine, of course, Round Rock and Austin area. And I'm forgetting a lot more, I'm sure. And that's one of my favorite things to do, and that I hope I get more time to do this year is really explore these cities a little bit more in towns, as opposed to going to bed late, sleeping late, waking up, checking out of the hotel, trying to get lunch somewhere, maybe hitting up a record store or a bookstore if I have time just to do something, and then driving, 3-4 hours to the next place and then doing it again all over.
Sounds like
we can definitely sympathize with that struggle of road trips and trying to fit as many ballparks in, but yet trying to see as much of the region as you can. You were talking we got a little bit into the food in different places. So I know part of minor league marketing is finding ways to bring people in. So some of that can come in the forms of wacky promotions. What are some of the things that you've experienced that really stand out, and is there any trends that we can look forward to as far as promotional?
Well, I think we hit on some of the trends for sure with the alternate identities. When you're looking at any upcoming season, one of the trends you're going to see is pop culture anniversaries. So in 2019, I think we've got a 30th anniversary of Field of Dreams. So we're going to see quite a lot of Field of Dreams promos.
Seriously, it's been 30 years.
Yeah,
it's been 30 years.
Yeah,
8 Men Out too, right?
Yeah, 89 to 2019 for Field of Dreams. I think we'll see some Indiana Jones promos for 30th for Last Crusade, 35th for Temple of Doom. Definitely seen some of that. Major League, I think is that also 30? Yeah, and
88 or 89. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're seeing that. So that's always what last year's biggest trend on the anniversary front was Sandlot. We had Squint, the actor who played Squints playing, showing up all over the country. And
I saw him in Lowell.
Yeah. So that's definitely a trend. And as to what else, there's going to be a new season of Copa de la Diversion, the Hispanic marketing, designed to attract Hispanic fans and more resonate with Hispanic communities, which are generally not marketed to as well as they could be by minor league teams. So we're going to, that's about a month that we're going to have a new Copa unveiling, but it's going to be like 70 some teams this year that have alternate, Hispanic, Spanish language identities. So that's going to be huge.
Do you have any promotions that are ongoing that you found interesting or that you've experienced? And I mean, I know some of the ones that I've experienced. Every year we hit Star Wars night in Buffalo because that's pretty crazy. I know in Rochester they do a Batman night every year. Is there any of the ones that are kind of continual, that are ongoing, that jump out at you?
For the most part, the ongoing ones don't jump out too much, just because when you do something a whole lot, then it becomes commonplace. It's commonplace because it works, so it's not to put that down. But I guess for someone like me who is always trying to find what's new, it becomes harder to, cover Star Wars nights or Bark in the Park nights, or of course like just fireworks shows, things like that you just keep seeing. The superstars, those guys are really great, but when you see things year in and year out, you take it for granted a little bit. So there's things I enjoy on a fan level, but not two that really get me excited on a professional level in terms of something new to cover, because I'll cover a promo even if it might be a bad idea or really kind of ultimately be unsuccessful, as long as it's new. I want the new.
It's kind of hard not to agree with that. You definitely want to go out and see something that blows your mind at a minor league stadium. So, I missed you last year in Fort Wayne. I think you're looking for some designated eaters and happen to be out of town.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I was there. The day I was in Fort Wayne was Father's Day, and it was, of all the places I went last year, who would have thought that Fort Wayne would have been the absolute hottest? But it was brutally hot on Father's Day in Fort Wayne.
Yeah. So do you agree that Fort Wayne usually gets a pretty high ranking from us with minor league ballparks? Do you concur?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's one of the best Class A ballparks for sure. When I picked my own favorites, back in October, November, wherever that was, and I did it level by level. Again, revealing my sensibilities a little bit. A lot of people would pick Parkview Field in Fort Wayne. I went with McCormick Field in Asheville because I think in my heart of hearts I like the classics, the really old ballparks, the ones that once they're gone can't really ever come back in terms of other ballparks emulating anything close to what the feeling they have.
Yeah. And plus you get to spend some time in Asheville, North Carolina, which is not a bad way to spend a weekend.
No, another great town. Talking about great towns to visit, Asheville's certainly a great minor league town.
Wow, I'm just sitting here thinking I could just continue this conversation for hours, even days, but we're coming up against an hour already, so the time has flown, Ben. I think maybe this might be a good spot to wrap it up.
Right.
I really want to thank you for joining us, and you want to take a minute again to pimp out your social media, your blog, everything else, so our listeners can know where to find you.
Yeah, sure thing. Ben Hill, cover the business and culture of minor league baseball for MiLB.com. I got a blog, Ben's Biz blog, bensbiz.mlblogs.com. Twitter, Ben's Biz. Instagram, the Ben's Biz. Just Google Ben's Biz, and you'll find me, and just follow your own path to my work, and get in touch. Any way you can get in touch with me. My email's at the bottom of every article and blog post I write. I really like hearing from readers. I really try to be responsive in that way. So, let's have a discussion. I'm here for it.
Yeah, and he does respond, because you've responded to me in the past a few times, so I can vouch for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how the idea to have you on here. I know we bumped into each other. I think in New Britain and then again in Hartford. So if anybody say hi to Ben. He's a friendly guy.
I try to be. Yeah, that was the last game in New Britain Rock Cats history, wasn't it?
Yes, that was. Yeah, we were at the last game. They wanted the stadium to stay open so much they went into extra innings that day.
Yeah, like 15 innings. It was absurd.
Yeah. What do you think of that rule of putting a person on second base to start every extra inning in the minors?
You know what? I'm 100% okay with it. If I was a fan and I heard that, I'd be like, that is so stupid. That's not baseball. But as someone who's been to hundreds and hundreds of minor league baseball games, I think everybody wants to get out of there. Players, staff, fans. I never, ever want to see that implemented in Major League Baseball. But in the minors, it's okay. We came here to have fun. Yes, we care who wins. Not enough to sit through 15, 17 innings of a minor league game, especially on the player development side too. It really messes up bullpen usage. I love position players pitching, but you don't really need the catcher in there for 3 innings in the 15th through 17th inning. So it really does make sense from a pragmatic standpoint. Just never do it in the majors, and I'm totally cool.
Yeah, I got to say I can't argue with that either. I mean, I don't have a problem with a tie. I mean, if you went 12 innings and nothing's decided, all right, it's a tie. That'd be okay with me too. So Ben, once again, thanks for joining us, and we'd love to have you on again sometime and hear how your travels are going.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do it again sometime.
All right, sounds great. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Take care. Happy journeys.
Thank you. You as well.
Can I ask a question before we get to the next segment? How many times does a hockey player have to play either on his back, on his knees, on his belly, or turned completely around before somebody replaces him with somebody else? Can somebody answer me that question? Can somebody answer me why Andrew McDonald has a job on the Flyers still? Sorry. Obey the Puck segment brought to you today by Dan Colachico. I'm fine.
Hey, I'm just proud that I made it through the whole thing. I only mentioned the Pawtucket Red Sox twice, so I'm very proud of myself.
Before we move on, pork roll.
When Ben said that he grew up around Philly, I thought we were going off the rails.
I was going to let him have it because you guys saw me verbally react. I was like, ooh, and then I was like, not say a word.
Well, I did mention Trenton pork roll, but I think that kind of got lost in the other ones we came up with.
He said the words pork roll.
Oh.
That's all I care about. I don't care.
He's from Southern Jersey.
I don't care if you call it Trenton pork roll. I don't care if you call it schmuckface pork roll. As long as the words pork roll.
If it was an affiliated team in Northern Jersey, they would be called the Taylor Hams. It's just there's nothing up there.
And there would be a terrible affiliation. It would be a terrible affiliated team.
The Taylor Hams and the pork roll played each other.
That sounds like a pretty good rivalry.
Actually, we got to get the
Somerset Patriots.
No. We got to get the Trenton pork roll versus the somebody. Yeah.
I think it's pretty interesting that both Reading and Portland are rebranding themselves as the Whoopie Pies.
No, I think they both claim the birth of the Whoopie Pie.
And having had both, Maine is far superior.
Oh.
Just saying.
I didn't know there was a difference. I'm surprised.
You wouldn't think there would be, would you? So we held this to the end of the episode today, but we're going to do our recap of where we've been in the last 2 weeks before we sign off, because I know everybody out there in the podcast universe loves to hear where we've been. So, Mark, you want to start us off this week? Because Dave and I have a place in common this week.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, I went to a couple high school basketball games this past Saturday. One was in Jeffersonville. Check it out, some semi-state basketball action. Arena is a typical Indiana gym, about 4,800 seats, if you call that typical. The city itself is quite nice. Jeffersonville, Indiana sits on the Ohio River, overlooks Louisville, and they have some nice little coffee shops, restaurants, places to visit. It was a nice February Saturday afternoon. Got to walk over the People Bridge over the Ohio River, took some great pictures. I had a blast. On my way back, I checked out Columbus East High School, the Orange Pit. That's what they call it, the Orange Pit. My review should be up either tonight or tomorrow morning.
It's already up.
It's the state. Once you walk in, everything is orange and brown. I mean, you're just watching basketball under these orange tinge. And what I found out from the AD is that about 10 years ago, they had major flooding. They had 8 feet of water on the court, and after the water rescinded, they had 13 dead catfish laying around the court. So,
sweet.
Catfish, yeah. So I don't know if they ate them or skinned them, but I thought that was one of those quirky little stories you get to hear on your travels. And kind of like Ben earlier today, it's makes the travels that much more enjoyable.
Wow.
So that's where I was.
Yeah, the review of the orange place is up. The orange place. I'm sorry for those of you who are from that town. And yeah, the pictures are great. I would have loved to have played in a big orange gym in high school.
Yeah, this is this giant sign, Orange Pit. You know, it's just it's fun. It's fun to say I play at the Orange Pit.
Yeah. So Dave, let's see. I know the answer to this, but where have you been in the past couple of weeks?
I'm going to go backwards. Does that work?
Sure.
I go backwards. So
you don't drive backwards. That would be a little tougher.
Well, not often. So this past weekend was Family Day weekend up here. You guys have a holiday or something on Monday, didn't you? What was it? What was it down there?
Oh, President's Day?
President's Day.
We kind of ignored it this year.
You should change it to "We need a president on President's Day." But anyway, I digress. No, this past Saturday I was straight out of Compton, so it was off to the Compton Family Ice Arena, which is on the campus of Notre Dame in Notre Dame, Indiana. There is one thing that this place lacks, and nobody missed it. Advertising. There is absolutely no advertising in this place. There are no banners. There's no billboards. There are no commercials. There's no nothing. Everything is Notre Dame. And this place is absolutely gorgeous. Not very old. There are only 3 colors, apparently. They are gold and blue and green. Everything is gold, blue, and green. The floors, the seats, everything. I guess the only negative I can really say, the seats are a little on the narrow side. So, I know I sent you guys the picture. You guys talked about the seats in Washington with the cup holders on the armrest. So immediately I went, oh yeah, boys aren't going to like this one. But, that is definitely a spot to go. The band is there. The students are there. A little bit of a side note that was pretty cool is the goaltender for the Irish is the son of, I think it's fair to say, legendary Canadian pioneer women's goaltender, Manon Rhéaume. So her son is was the goaltender for the Irish, which was pretty cool.
Cool.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you feel old? Manon Rhéaume has a college-age son.
No doubt, eh?
Yeah, wow.
And we're
Manon Rhéaume is actually on the puck wall in the man cave.
And we're officially
an autographed Atlanta Knights puck.
We're officially too old.
With the New Jersey Rock and Rollers of the Roller Hockey International. Remember that fun little league?
Well, when she did her preseason game for the Lightning, they were only 1 or 2 years old at that point. They were just infants, infants still. But the weekend before that, it was off to New England. So my daughter, who just insists on going to new states, we rewarded her. This was her Christmas trip, and we hit Vermont. And I don't know if I'm wrong here. There's not a ton of things to see in Vermont, like a great skiing state. But if you're like a sports fan, there's not a lot of spectator sports going on.
You got three options in the whole state of Vermont, really. You got Vermont hockey, Vermont basketball, and the minor league Lake Monsters.
So yeah, it was Vermont hockey and Vermont basketball in the quintessential doubleheader. I think it's probably the best doubleheader you can get. I've done a few of them, and it's always great when you can match a hockey and a basketball. I've done it at Michigan a couple times, and good times. I'll let you roll right into this, Paul, but two venues that seemed kind of on the old side. And here's what I found interesting, and I'll let you take off from that point. Both were not overly comfortable. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. That was a long day for my rear end, I got to tell you.
But if I have this right, you seemed way more positive on Vermont hockey than on Vermont basketball.
Yeah, well, yeah, you must have read my two reviews. I would definitely agree with you. Both were built about the same time. I think they were both in the 60s, 1963, I know, for the hockey, and I think basketball is about the same time frame. But yeah, I came away with two very different impressions from the two places. And I think really the difference for me was access and just the amount of crowding. The basketball court was about what? It was about 3,200 seats.
Yeah,
but man, it looked like they fit twice as many people in there as they should have, because it was
packed,
shoulder to shoulder. You couldn't move without bumping into four people. Just a very crowded lot. As soon as you opened the doors and got in the lobby, it was crowded. There were lines to the concessions, lines to the bathroom. No room to sit. I had a guy's knee in my back the whole time. And I think my knee in turn was in the back of the person in front of me. And then with everybody, it's Vermont, so it's cold. It was about 20, 25 degrees. So everybody had coats and hats and gloves, and there was just nowhere to put anything. So they got in the way too, and coats getting stepped on. And yeah, just a very crowded, old timey place.
Now, how is that different from hockey though? Because I thought hockey was plenty crowded, and I feared we had a little bit of space in that, like, there wasn't people directly behind us at all times, and I had a space beside me. But if it was packed in, you could have been in another section in the hockey rink, and it would have been somebody's knees in my back. And well, you were sitting on the ice, weren't you?
Holy cow! We had front row seats on the ice, and I got to tell you, I have never sat this close to the glass in my life. I was maybe 3 inches away from the glass. My nose was about 3 inches from the glass. It was incredible. I just think that, I don't know, maybe it's my hockey bias showing through, but the basketball court was a big box, concrete box with just bleachers. But while the hockey rink, while it did have just bleachers, except for one end, oddly enough, the reserve seating was on the end in a giant section.
Season ticket holders.
Yeah. It was just, it had that old time hockey barn feel to it. And I think the other big difference was the student section.
Oh, absolutely.
Basketball didn't really have a student section, where hockey had 3 sections of kids with thundersticks and making noise and into the game. And I just thought the atmosphere was so much better with the hockey.
Definitely the crowd was better in hockey. And there was more to look at. Like the hockey rink just felt like that kind of old time hockey. Reminded me of a Quebec venue with the big rounded roof barn kind of thing, the hardwood on the ceiling, whereas the gym was a gym. And I could totally see them pushing the bleachers away.
Well, they did. They
20 guys shooting hoops after.
Yeah, they had the baskets raised up to the roof like you used to have to do in high school, where you cranked them up and they went up to the roof. So
that's how it is.
Yeah, you could tell when there wasn't a game there. They had them all down, and that's where gym class was.
Yeah. That's what I say all the time.
And
But
they're
still
building a
fun.
new basketball rink there. It's going to go right in between where the two of them were. Did I call it a basketball rink? Well, anyway, a new 3,000 seat arena for the basketball team. So
Like Ted
you can't
Cruz.
complain about the support that the Catamounts got from either side.
Yeah, no, good crowds on both cases, and I got to give you credit. Like that little Church Street, that was something I would have missed. I needed to walk another half a block, and I didn't the first time we were down there, and then that was kind of a nice spot. Actually, when we came out and they had all the Christmas lights still.
Yeah, that was nice.
And Church Street is a pedestrian only, and my wife absolutely loved the picture I got of my daughter there. So yeah, no, that was good time. Good time either way, right? Like I was kind of, busting you up a bit because I was thinking maybe your hockey bias was coming through a little bit, but no, the rink definitely had a little bit more of a hockey feel to it, and but both were fun. It was a good weekend.
I would say that the university agrees because they're not replacing the hockey rink; they are replacing the gym. But the schematics to the new gym look fantastic. It's going to be modern. It's going to have 360 seating. It looks like it's going to be really nice. It's going to be done for the 2020 season. And yeah, Burlington's a fantastic city to go visit. It's always had that reputation of great place. If you like craft beers, holy cow, you could go nuts in Burlington. And I was disappointed that I was the only one who even had a beer when we went out to dinner.
They have good pizza there too, for what I remember.
We talked about. We all had beer. I had ginger beer, and
that's right.
Pam had root beer, and
yeah, that's right. And I had man beer.
You had man beer.
Yeah, the food there, a quaint little town in the summertime. That's really when you got to go to Burlington, unless you're a skier. But Burlington in the summer, it's really a walkable city. You can walk right down to the lake, all the way back up the hill where all the bars and restaurants are. And the place has really got a good nightlife for a small city. Yeah, so did you go anywhere else in the last 2 weeks, Dave?
The only other thing I would add is that once again, the Laurier Golden Hawks have won the Battle of Waterloo as we shut out. Did we shut out? I think we shut out the Waterloo Warriors at the odd. We did shut them out, so that was good. But other than that was it.
All right. And so after my trip to Vermont, we actually, I forgot all about the Manchester Monarchs. I'll talk about them really quick. As we were driving back from Burlington back down to Massachusetts, we decided, you know what, the schedule lines up. We're going to stop at SNHU Arena in Manchester, the home of the Monarchs of the East Coast. Well, not the East Coast League. Don't call it that. People yell at me when I do that. It's the ECHL. Stands for nothing.
Because it's wrong.
Yeah.
Like the Riptide.
Manchester was at one time one of the marquee minor league hockey teams in the AHL. They got caught up in the Western migration, where all the West Coast NHL teams moved their farm teams out west to be closer to home. And so Manchester got a consolation prize. The Kings said, hey, we're taking your team away. We'll give you the RECHL team because we own that one too. Put it in Manchester. It's been 4 years there. The last year of the Monarchs, the team averaged about 6,000 fans a game. First year of the ECHL went down to 4,600. Now they are next to last in the ECHL. They're averaging about 2,400 fans a game. So it's really.
Why is that? Is it the hockey savvy market says, hey, this hockey stinks, we want AHL, or promotion?
It might be one of those things. Part of it is, they haven't gotten over being jilted. We're seeing the same thing in Pawtucket, and I hate to see what's going to happen once the Paw Sox leave in a couple of years. You're going to see the same kind of thing. But also, the team has been sold twice in the 4 years that they've been in the ECHL, and they're for sale again. So I think it's also kind of a reaction to an unsettled market, and just kind of the people have figured this team is gone. Why support it?
I mean,
because it's a really nice meeting. I'm sorry, Dan.
Here's my problem. I understand to a point, like not supporting a team when they're not doing well, or not paying outrageous ticket prices when the team is, doing less than. But I get a real problem fundamentally with. So the team moves from your AHL team moves to a different city. and then you get an ECHL team, it's still, you're not proving anything by not going to these games. All you're proving is the team who left correct that, okay, well, we couldn't sustain an American Hockey League team here. Why the hell do we think we're going to sustain an ECHL team here? Nobody's coming. I get to a point doing that, but at a certain point you gotta go, well, if we don't go, if we want this back so much, we better show the hell up.
Glens Falls is a great example of that.
Bingo!
I got a better example. Winnipeg, Manitoba. When the Moose came in there, they just lined up to watch the AHL Moose.
Perfect.
And it was
perfect example.
A perfect spot. Perfect. I mean, it was the perfect storm to get the Jets back, right? Like, it just all lined up perfectly. But without that strong support for the Moose, I'm not sure the Jets would have been an option.
It's the perfect example because you literally took an opportunity to be like, we're still Winnipeg. We still want hockey. We're going to go see the Moose, and we're going to fill this, 15,000 MTS center? We're still going to fill this sucker up. And not only that, not only do we have an NHL team, we got a building that has 2 hockey teams and 2 hockey teams that do well. And, the Jets sold out for what? Another 16 years? It's a long time, right? I'm not overdoing that number. It's a pretty long time.
Well, I guess the other piece of that equation is that after the Jets left and went to Phoenix, they got their arena.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, all the puzzle pieces fell back into to eventually get the team back there, to get a team back there. And it just so happened that Atlanta, unfortunately, and we've had Lloyd on before, and you all know how I feel that was an unfair shake, but that happened to be the team that needed to go first. Whether I agree with it or not is for a completely different conversation for another time, but all those pieces fell into place. Meanwhile, in Quebec, you have a junior team that'll sell out Videotron Center, and the league will be like, Seattle.
Well, I have a buddy, big hockey fan. He kind of thinks Carolina is going to be the next team to move to Quebec. That's his theory based on some stuff he told me. I don't know how accurate that is.
I don't think with his stubborn, I'm going to say stubborn, cause I'm so tired of trying to put Gary Bettman over at the same, as far as monetarily and popularity, the NHL has never been more popular. I get it, blah, 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 blah. The game has suffered in certain spots, and the cities have suffered in certain spots. And I absolutely will never, ever agree with a word he says about not putting a team in Quebec, and the city and the town cannot support 2 franchises and 2 fan bases and blah, 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 blah. Is he blind? Is he blind? I don't understand that.
I don't get it because I don't think people were really excited about Winnipeg being back in the league, but my God, you go to Winnipeg, they're selling the place out. You're the number 1 team in the city, the province.
So I think the big difference, though, between the 2 situations, and one of the big things I think there's 2 things that are holding Quebec back. And Dan, you're absolutely right about the number of fans in the stands and support at a grassroots level. Television market, I think, is a big thing. Yeah. I don't think the NHL thinks they can gain any more eyeballs onto TV screens by putting a team in Quebec.
Okay.
I think the other and
I understand. I'm not blowing your comment off. I'm blowing the logic of the NHL off, by the way.
Well, you know what? Like you got that whole Carolina area. Now, what are their TV numbers? I don't know. They're definitely good at the end of a home game after a win. That's prime Carolina Hurricane time on TV.
I'm just saying with, and I say this in a non-sarcastic, ironic way, as well, air quotes, as Montreal is doing, shove another team in. Come on. Let's test some loyalties. Let's go for it.
The other piece, though, is corporate. There is not a huge corporate corporate backing in Quebec City. Not to the extent of some of the other markets. I think that's probably the
all right.
big question.
Let's start a corporation and let's get this sucker going. Quebec. Nordique
SJ Corporation Incorporated, headquarters in Quebec City.
Nordique International.
Be the only corporation in Quebec City that speaks English.
Yeah. But you don't speak French?
Not really. No.
Ah, damn it. Well, there goes that idea.